So on Friday, well, actually Thursday, I recorded a video called Net Zero, more like Net Nope, where we talked about Kimmy Badnock's advancing of the trenches of the net zero narrative, going from, well, we don't trust, climate science. We are quite skeptical to, oh, actually, well, now we agree with the science, but we're still not, sure about the impact, to the new narrative that Kimmy Badnock is now desperate to push, that yes, we could do all this net zero stuff. We could do this, but oh, it's just so gosh darn expensive. It's just too late to do it now. It's just so expensive, which, you are a party in charge, for 14 years. Why then did you not do it all that time ago if it was so expensive now? But we were, of course, I think, treated to something else I said in that video, that we have to now really, really push back against narratives where they try and blame net zero for absolutely everything. Because not too long ago, even in my own hometown recently, there was a blackout, and the Reform UK crowd was spamming all like the local Facebook groups, blaming net zero when they had no reason or evidence to say that it was the net zero that was the cause of it. It turned out to be, believe it or not, power line failure. That's what the national grid said the cause of that particular one was. Nothing to do with net zero. But it is something we are now seeing them push more and more and more. And we have to push back against this. Because remember, Farage's big claim is we should have a referendum on net zero. What does that mean if, for example, we have that referendum and cancelling net zero wins? What could they spin winning that referendum into? Does this mean that the UK can never fund any green energy infrastructure or anything like that in the future unless you have another referendum to undo that referendum? It's super worrying. And we should be very, very much pushing back against this, because this will have ruinous consequences if something like this goes ahead. But we were treated to such a display with the whole Heathrow fire. And oh boy, is it a tale of who can blame net zero fastest. So before we go on into this and explaining what happened, like I say, click the like, click the share button. Down below, there's the Patreon page, there's the Buy Me Coffee link where you can well buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there is the Pony Club down below as well. So let's remind you, of course, first, how this all happened. So on Friday the 1st, the 21st of March, there was a fire at a substation, or electrical substation, shall we say, near Heathrow. That fire then led to Heathrow Airport being shut down, that caused mass travel chaos, not in the UK, but internationally as well. Like I say, Heathrow, big international airport, if not the main UK international airport in the UK. And immediately, of course, in the aftermath of that, people on Twitter, Facebook, Blue Sky all start speculating who or what caused the fire. From, Billy trying to retrieve his frisbee to Liz Truss's first new day on the job. However, to really understand this, you have to look at what the claims of one Richard Tice, yes, that Richard Tice, aka the Reform MP, Richard Tice, started tweeting out about this. And immediately he put the blame directly on net zero policies for the cause of Heathrow's shutdown. His main claim was that it was due to a, quote, refusal to have diesel generators. So if this was actually true, it would actually be a major blow to net zero supporters like myself. So this actually needs a lot further investigation. So first things first, let's have a look at how this lie got spread even more and how this gained traction. Because the Telegraph was the prime source for this. And remember, a major newspaper doing this. So they published an article originally saying, hey, there's a fire at Heathrow substation. This is what happened. By later, the mid-morning, they then had gone into the article and explored why Heathrow was so vulnerable, noting into them particularly a lack of backup power systems. That was the initial thing. What then happened, the last time it was updated, it then became Heathrow forced to shut down because of net zero. And they were citing Tice's claims. They were directly citing Richard Tice, who had no evidence that it was this refusal to have backup diesel generators. But Tice had claimed that a, quote, industry expert, which we don't know who that is, but it's just an industry expert, had told him that Heathrow had replaced all its backup diesel generators with a biomass one, or with biomass ones, so that it could meet net zero targets. This was then jumped on by numerous others, right-wing commentators, who then started to massively amplify this claim. But the Telegraph still ran with Tice's claims, even despite previous reporting contradicting them. So other stories followed on this that without fact checking from other sources that they were covering this. So New York Times, Heathrow CEO stated that the backup systems worked, but they couldn't power the entire airport. Bloomberg then backed up this, saying that the current systems allowed for very limited operations, but they weren't designed to support full functionality. The BBC even said itself that it confirmed that Heathrow's diesel generators still existed and functioning as expected. The big key here and the takeaway from this was that you had one electrical substation that was responsible for all of Heathrow. And that was probably literally an accident waiting to happen. Probably an accident waiting to happen. This could have happened at any time. This could have happened 5 years ago. We'd have still seen the chaos. It was an accident waiting to happen. And there has been now reports that they are going to look into this even more to make sure this can't happen in the future, to learn these lessons. Ultimately, what this comes down to is the fact you need more energy infrastructure. I'm afraid, guys, you need more energy infrastructure. But so already we know and we can see that this was false. But it then gets into even far more misinformation, because the Telegraph then published a lot later stories, still continuing to blame net zero with Richard and citing Richard Tice as the source for all this stuff, despite the fact that you have had 3 different outlets, New York Times, Bloomberg, BBC, all saying this was wrong. There were diesel generators there. They were powering it. But when you lose that big piece of infrastructure, if you lose a big piece of infrastructure, your smaller ones can't then power all of Heathrow. Just a fact. But of course, they go on to blame net zero still. Now, why were they blaming, in particular, biomass generators? That was because, believe it or not, there is biomass generators at Heathrow. However, they are nothing to do with powering critical systems. The biomass generator, in particular, that they make reference to, or at least Tice has now blamed for this, is responsible for the heating of Terminal 2. And guess what? It worked throughout this crisis. It worked. First of all, it is not a backup generator. Let's make that clear. It continued to work despite the fact that the substation fire that was going on, and it had nothing to do with the powering of any critical systems that were needed to keep Heathrow running. Now, should we give Richard Tice any benefit of the doubt? After all, he's not an electrical expert. He knows nothing about the running of Heathrow. Should we give him any leeway, saying, "Oh, maybe he could have just confused the system"? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. There should be no charitability at all given, because this was a clear example, as we said right at the beginning, of they are looking to anything they can to try and blame net zero for anything. And remember, that claim from Tice to the Telegraph, amplified by other right wing, media influencers from Liz Truss, GB News, they were all out there saying it, blaming net zero. Well, it's net zero, but that's why he throws down. Nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it whatsoever. But they went on a massive blame fest for net zero. So always remember this, because I can guarantee you this now. This incident will be cited in the future by people like Richard Tice, any other anti-net zero zealot, as to say, this is why the system failed, because of net zero. The Heathrow problems, the travel chaos that happened, were not because of net zero. There were diesel generators at Heathrow. They weren't suitable enough to power all of Heathrow, but they were there for critical backup systems that were needed to keep on running. Like, I don't know, the air traffic control tower and, the radar to make sure, the planes don't go flying into each other. And there are biomass generators there, but they have nothing to do with any critical systems, and they are there more, as we said, for basically at the moment, the heating of Terminal 2. But I guarantee you now, this will be cited time and time again, probably at least for the rest of the year. That any time anyone brings up, net zero, they'll pull out this. Oh, look what happened to Heathrow. Guarantee you, this is what will happen. So be vigilant. Make people aware of what happens. That Tice had no idea what he was talking about, and that there were actual diesel generators at Heathrow which were working, powering critical systems during that fire. And yes, there was a biomass generator there, but it wasn't powering any critical systems. It was heating Terminal 2. And guess what? It worked throughout all this crisis. So, As always, let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.